The details are out on the DJ Moore extension. Plus, after the Hall of Fame game, we got Hard Knocks and a whole slew of training camp updates as the Bears get ready to go play Buffalo. Me and Nick talk through everything about the Chicago Bears on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us, a Chicago Bears podcast hosted by yours truly, Robert Schmitz, editor-in-chief of Da Bears blog, right here with my co-host Nick Whalen of Football Guys, as we try to deliver you the most balanced analysis and statistical podcast that we can to give you as holistic a perspective as possible about your beloved Chicago Bears. And Nick, what a week it has been. We get the shocking DJ Moore bomb, but I want to revisit it briefly because, like you mentioned to me just a few minutes ago, we got the details out on the DJ Moore deal. And dude, Nick, I don't want to make a meal out of this because this fit my narrative way too well, but it would have been real easy for Ryan Poles to leave DJ Moore's $16-17 million cap hit in place and then just stretch the money out as expected with an AAV of, say, $23.5 million for the major years of the rest of DJ's contract. But that is not what Ryan Poles did. Instead, he dropped his $16-17 million cap hit down to a $7 million cap hit, freeing up $9 million in cap space and jumping the Bears from what would have been a very normal $12 million that most teams try to carry into the season to now just double that at about 21. I don't know about you, Nick. I cannot shake the idea that that is a very curiously good player contract sized hole if Poles was to work the trade market. Do you think I'm crazy?
Oh, not at all. I mean, it's funny because when we heard the extension, I was debating a little bit with Aaron Lemming. Like, I think all of us were like trying to figure out, okay, how is this going to
Why?
be structured? You know, and I mean, this when you look at it, the structure of it is very team friendly, and you know, thank you, DJ Moore, for that. I think that says a little bit about his leadership and him trusting the Bears a little bit. But that extra 9 million, it's not for Unique Ngakwe. Like it's for
You could
somebody
have already
better.
signed Unique Ngakwe.
Right.
Emmanuel Ogba just took $5 million, and I think we can all agree Ogba's a better player than
Right.
it was either Ogba or it was Lawson. Both better players than Unique Ngakwe.
Right.
So Unique's value is probably at about $3.5 million,
Hmm. Yeah.
reasonably speaking. You could do that with twelve and
Hmm.
a half million dollars and still roll into the season. The Bears didn't. This
Right.
reminds me a lot, not to, crown myself, Nick, but we talked about back in, what was it, April at the time? No, it was March, about how Jalen Johnson's contract was curiously skewed towards creating space in 2024, and then the Keenan Allen trade happens a little bit afterwards. This feels
Hmm.
very similar to me, where
Yeah.
I
And
don't think you're freeing up this space for flexibility to do nothing with it. Always possible that you could just roll the space over to next season because you didn't use it. But I don't know, Nick. This strikes me like the Bears have something up their sleeve.
right. I mean, I think it's the best of both worlds, like you're talking about. Like you have space in case, we do try to go after Jonathan Allen or a better D end or make some huge trade. I mean, my pipe dream is the Raiders are terrible. We make a massive trade for Max Crosby. We need that for him, right? But then also, like you just said, like, okay, let's say you have that flexibility to make a move like that. Okay. Maybe not Max Crosby. That's a pipe dream. But, anyways, let's say it doesn't happen. Then you carry it over. Like you can carry over cap space. So then, like, either way, it doesn't hurt you, but it gives you a possibility. So, I mean, it's good to see. And then also, I mean, I know Hard Knocks, them bringing him up at practice, you can tell some of his like they're going through like Kevin Warren, like the deal was already done, Kevin Warren. It wasn't like you were like saying yes. I don't think at that point, but it was cool just to see DJ there. I didn't realize his actual agent is Jason Rosenhaus, not Drew. Drew was there, but Jason was his actual agent. But just seeing them all go through that and being excited in the middle of practice and then going out to practice afterwards. And he's beaming. You know what I mean? Like he can't help but smile. He can't help but be excited. And his teammates are excited for him. That's the cool thing about a team, and I know you'd referenced the cross multiple times. I've coached for years and played, and just that's the thing that people don't get. I feel like because you saw Cole Kmet congratulating him, Nate Davis did. Keenan was dancing, like they were all excited, and it's all of those guys aren't like, man, wish I had some money or I want a contract extension because like they are competing for the same money if you're being technical about it, but you're happy for each other, which is a family, which I think speaks a little bit to the character of this team. So that was, I think, a cool sight of Hard Knocks on this extension.
It is really cool. And another thing I thought was really neat that Poles mentioned was something you and I talked about, which was the flexibility that this creates for DJ as a person to stop worrying about the money
Mhm.
piece of what keeps him in Chicago and instead just go out there and play football. Also, you mentioned how the contract is surprisingly team friendly in general. For those who want to know what Nick means by that, that means that 2024 and 2025, DJ's 27 and 28-year-old seasons, if you want to be very explicit about this, you cannot cut DJ Moore and expect any cap savings to come from that. Those 2 years, for all intents and purposes, are not only guaranteed, but they're locked in. Then, it's starting in 2026, if for some reason something has happened, DJ can be cut for still $16.5 million of cap savings. You'll have $12 million of dead money also. But
Mhm.
in a catastrophic scenario, DJ's contract has an out as early as 2026. But in the opposite scenario, where best case for DJ and the Bears do not have to reframe this contract until 2029. So they have 4 years of potential outs, basically 4 team options after 2 guaranteed seasons, which, Nick, to your point, especially given that this cap number already places DJ in the bottom of the top 10 as far as receivers go. That's in today's money and
Right.
today's cap hits. Going forward, once we get to 25, 26, 27, that $28.5 million cap figure, I have to imagine that's going to probably be maybe 15th in terms of total receiver numbers. And so it's a very friendly deal for everybody involved. I don't want to speculate on what that may mean. I'm glad DJ's enjoying Chicago. That I'll leave it at that, right? But it's gonna make me wonder. Like you mentioned his name earlier, Jonathan Allen's $14 million cap hit suddenly fits on the Bears.
Yep.
Matthew Judon's potential $13-15 million extension suddenly fits on the Bears. You start to look into the future, and I just have no idea what the Bears could do.
Mhm.
But with $20 million of cap space, there's a lot more possibilities. Also, quick thing that I did want to mention for all my cap fiends out there, because I know you cap fiends are out there. If you use over the caps calculator for the Chicago Bears and you look at 2024, you may notice that the cap room is starting to get a little bit tight. That is in part because, Nick, if you look this up, you'll see it too. For some reason, OTC hasn't adjusted their estimates on the 2025 estimated cap, and they have the estimated cap only about $800,000 more than the 2024 cap, and that's not going to be a thing. So,
No.
for all intents and purposes, the Bears likely have about $55 million in future cap space, which is a very normal number. They're not cap gods anymore, but they're going to have flexibility to sign a player or two and land an extension going forward, which I would say is exactly where they should be from a health perspective. But it does, I'm not going to let this go, Nick, leave them with the option to make one more trade,
Mhm.
probably a defensive lineman. Not because they hate offensive line, but because starting offensive linemen just don't grow on trees. We should talk about this. We have to talk about the Davis thing,
Well,
right? We have to talk
hold on.
offensive line.
Yeah, I want to, but I have one more thing with the Moore contract
Mm-hmm.
where just to put this in perspective, okay? Because you had talked about the cap grows over time,
Yep.
right? Like it's gonna be more next year. I mean, it is growing. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but like a significant amount in the last, especially 5 years. So if we go in the future 5 more years, Robert, it's 2029. It's the last year of DJ Moore's deal. Okay. Now he's gonna make, or the cap number is 24.5 million for that year. Okay. Yeah. We traded, and that's his age 32 season. We traded for 32-year-old Keenan Allen, and his cap number is 22. That's in 2024. In 2029, DJ Moore's only 2.5 million more than that. That is a huge bargain. And that's, I mean, I don't know what level of player he'll be at that time, but just to give you a perspective of the same type of level, like that is super team friendly. So that has me excited. I mean, also like I like players getting paid, man. I just do. Because I mean, you see the injuries, you see, especially when you watch Hard Knocks and some of these other things, you see their families. Like you see the comfort and like the things that that gives them. And like,
Yep.
why would we not root for that? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm not rooting for the man, like the McCaskies just save all the money. You know what I mean? Like, I want the players to have it.
Nick,
So yeah.
Nick, you mentioned something. Would you like to guess what the cap was in 2019? You mentioned the 5-year growth of the cap.
Yeah.
You want to take a guess?
So what's it at this year? Do you have this year? It's
This year it
250.
is $259.2 million.
I'm gonna guess 2019 it was 182.
Oh, you're really close. It's 188.2. So
Woo-hoo.
that is a growth of 37%, right? If you went 200 and let's go $259.2 million times 1.37, you're listening to me do live math. That's a $355 million cap if the same aggressive rise happens. Doubt it. But if we used that figure, right, and you use DJ Moore's new current contract, that puts him at a cap figure percentage of, let's see, so that'd be 28. That's going to mean he'll end up being about 7.8% of the cap, as opposed to the roughly 10% of the cap he's projected to be in 2026 once the cap grows 5 more years. 5 years is a long time. Chances are his cap number will be hover between 9 and 8% of the cap throughout his tenure in Chicago. But you're going to see a lot more of these Justin Jefferson type deals that take 12 to 13% of the cap. So for a player like DJ Moore, who, yeah, I agree, he's a cornerstone player. You've said that. Ryan Poles has said that. All kinds of people have said that. This is the guy who you want to trust with your franchise. Full stop. Right? So
And
excited about it.
And sorry, and it's cool too because I think DJ referenced this, and I saw a couple articles where Keenan they were talking about an extension, or Keenan had referenced it, et cetera. So it had some kind of a legs before this, but now they're going to wait on it. But so I mean that has me excited too because it's like part of it is I know people are like, well, there's not enough, targets to go around, and the fantasy football people are thinking their stuff. I'm thinking about wins, and I don't care if Rome Odunze doesn't get 1,000 yards until his third year in the league, his fourth year. It doesn't matter to me. I want the Bears to win games, and so like Keenan being here this year, actually, Robert, I think helps the odds of him doing it and coming back next year or the year after, like as his career ends and trying to legacy or winning games because he knows the offense. He knows Caleb. He's got rapport. Like the odds are increased. That's another part of that getting him in town is, do you want to move again? Do you have to learn a whole new offense and rapport again? Like it increases the odds. I would rather he stays.
I know, Nick, you and I have gone around this horn a couple times now, but I'm going to echo what you just said because I think it's the biggest looming domino of the season, right? The season's result has a big effect, I think, on what Keenan Allen decides. Because at the end of the day, all Ryan Poles is probably reasonably going to be able to offer Keenan is a decent but not amazing extension where Keenan can finish his career respectably with an organization that's going to treat him well and give him a shot at winning a Super Bowl behind the most generational quarterback that we've seen, like or very similar to Patrick Mahomes. I'm not telling you that that's what's going to happen. I'm telling you that's the pitch. Does that make sense?
No,
Nick?
yeah. No, I get, yeah. And if Chicago doesn't make the playoffs this year, I think there's almost no chance Keenan Allen comes back.
No, because the Bears are basically going to try to audition for Keenan Allen and through the power of their organization, which is a laughable thing to say because the Bears have not had any power within their organization for almost a decade at this point. So I think it's I think it's one of the more interesting things to watch as far as a personal, like as far as the way that a personal situation may play out within the Chicago Bears organization, because they would love to leave a seat at the table for Keenan Allen. They would love to, but they don't need him. And Keenan has to know that they don't need him. Every play that Rome makes this season is going to be a reminder to Keenan that they could just move him out of the way and let Rome take over that role. So Keenan's going to have to decide who he is. He's going to have to, this is a whole separate thing, Nick. He's going to have to decide whether he accepts that his career is coming to an end or not. Is
That's
it?
true.
Or does he
Yeah.
want to play until he's 35? If he wants to
Right.
play until he's 35, screw that. I got plenty of
Mhm.
teams that are out there ready
Yeah.
to make
Oh,
me a wide receiver
yeah.
one. I'm going to go get
Mhm.
my bag, and good for him. But if he
Mhm.
decides that he only wants to play 1, 2, 3 more years and he wants to do it with Caleb Williams, Travis Kelce's taken a discount. Plenty of people on the Chiefs have taken discounts. This is what you do to play with the quarterback you like.
Yeah.
Or you're Stephon Diggs. Those are your two options, right?
Yeah. So one other small thing, and we can move on is on Hard Knocks. This is just a small thing. I think it was actually maybe right when that contract extension thing happened, but I saw Keenan Allen next to DJ Moore, and someone else I thought in a presser or something said something like Keenan's like 230, which I know he's listed like 215, but like he's a big dude, y'all. When
Yes.
I saw him standing next to DJ Moore, I was like, that's more than because it's a 2-inch listed height difference. I think it's at least 3. I think, dude, Keenan is a big guy, and I don't know how he runs routes, how he does, and how he gets the quickness that he does. He's just I mean, I've done a lot of scouting over the years, both for recruiting with football and with some other jobs of writing within football and in watching high school kids and watching college kids, whatever. There's so many different types of body types, right? You have the guy that's really good laterally, but not good vertically. You have the other way, you know what I mean? But I just don't know how a guy that tall and that big can move like that. It reminds me of Brandon Marshall. Remember Brandon Marshall? Like, dude,
How do you
how is he
forget?
doing what he does?
Yep.
I'm just in awe. So I'm excited for this year to watch Keenan move. He's a big dude.
You're going to get me on a tangent, but I was actually talking with a friend of mine in the coaching world. And one thing that he brought up that I hadn't thought about, Brandon Robinson, shout out to you, is the Bears' offense is DJ Moore and a bunch of huge dudes. Like, in terms of Nick, imagine, so back seven, for the most part, is going to play just about an entire game. You'll have a nickel corner and a base linebacker that'll often rotate in and out. And if you really want to play dime, you'll have one other DB. And the Bears will cycle a series of players that are Cole Kmet, who's probably going to play at 255, Gerald Everett, who's got the jumping ability of a defensive end at 245. You've got Rome Odunze, who's fast and plays at 210. You've got Keenan Allen, who, like you said, they casually used the number 230 pounds. And then against all of this, you have DeAndre Swift, who's going to test your ability to stay with him. Plus, every running back has some level of contact balance, and one of the hardest to tackle receivers in the NFL in DJ Moore. So
Yep.
what does this mean, Nick? The Bears have an opportunity, depending on how they distribute the football, to grind defenses down. And that won't look like a surprise explosive in the fourth. Explosives are explosives. What it'll look like, Bears fans, and I'm going to cite this to you guys because you've seen it. You've seen it over years with poor offenses. What happens when a defense gets tired? That's how 3rd and 8 becomes a first down when you dumped it off to the guy in about 4 yards, 4 yards in front of the sticks, and then he catches it, turns upfield, and you would swear that linebacker just doesn't have the ability to stop him from pushing forward and finishing over the line. You know what I'm talking about, Nick?
Wasn't that I'm trying to think of it was the dome game. It was either Minnesota or Detroit where there was a blitz and Justin threw it to DJ Moore short. And the guy had him by the ankle and DJ's like fighting and then breaks free and then goes. Like if they're fresh,
I
that's
think
not
it was
happening.
Detroit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And well, I think this kind of leads into a couple other points here that we could talk about is, that's why the NFL offenses have packages, like defenses have like those, we'll rotate defensive lines. We'll have like blitz packages and things like that. But personnel wise, it's not terribly different. Not like offense. We're like, you bring in big dog. You're like, okay, he's going to block, right? You bring in the 2 tight end sets. You bring in Tyler Scott for some speed, which leads into Velus Jones at running back. And I don't hate the idea, man. Do you?
No, I've never hated it. I might be the only Velus Jones defender left because in between all these moments of catastrophic failure, which let's not play games, Velus has had some of the most comically bad plays we've seen in a Bears uniform over his tenure in Chicago. And in between all of those plays are like legit good football plays that you look at and you're like, man, I don't know how we prune out all of the failure, but if we could, there's a useful football player in here
Yep.
compared to, like, okay, the comparison I'll make, and Bears fans, I'm sorry if this is going to feel like a cheap shot. I never saw Riley Ridley do anything. He never did anything wrong either, but he never did anything, right? He caught balls in open zone coverage, but he never did anything that I don't think that a Colin Johnson type is out there that could replicate. You follow my logic? With Velus, he'll get the ball, turn the corner, break a tackle, and pick up a first down that a lot of other guys on the roster can't do. You'd swear Tyler Scott can't cross the length of the field without falling over sometimes. I love you, Tyler. I hope you fix it. But he's on the turf a lot. Whereas Velus Jones, I know nobody cared because I know everybody was watching Houston play Indianapolis with the Bears' #1 overall pick on the line. But in the middle of that game, Nick, Velus Jones takes a carry, slips through a tiny crack in the Vikings defenders, and scampers for a 44-yard touchdown run.
Yep.
He's done stuff like that every season. He's been in a Bears
and
uniform.
in college. That's what got him drafted. I know people like laughed about his age and whatever, but like we needed a weapon, and there's a lot of third round picks
Ball
that don't make it.
He's a football player when he's got the pill.
And what it reminds me of is like there's always been, I think, a Bears receiver. You'd mentioned Riley Ridley, who hasn't like stepped up. And I'm going to hit on some of the old Bears like guys that follow us, not super old, but like, you know, Des White was a guy that I was hoping he was going to take the next step. Couldn't catch great. And I'm actually looking at his stats right now, Robert. This is how ugly it is, man. One year he had 94 targets and caught 51 passes for 656. That was his best year. The next year he had 107 targets, caught 49, not even half, for 583 yards. Those are his best 2 years. Like it just never took a step.
That
Mark
is so
Bradley,
many targets. That is so many targets
for no production. Like Mark Bradley's another guy, second round pick, didn't take a step. Like there's always that guy. And if this is his role and his package on this offense, we kind of need a guy like that. And it leads me to another thing. Another point I wanted to make on this pod was I heard this, Robert, from one source and didn't hear from anywhere else. So I'm curious if you heard this. And it's got me a little excited, actually. So DeAndre Swift, okay, he's flashed a little bit in camp, right? I heard he slimmed down to 205. Have you heard that?
I mean, I'm not asking questions like that. I probably should be, but that sounds fun. I like that a lot.
Well, I mean, because like I watched the Hard Knocks Giants edition, right? And they were talking about Swift and like how dynamic and how he's more of a package guy. Now, I don't. We talked about this last podcast. I don't think DeAndre Swift's walking in and getting 300 touches, and that's what he's going to be catching the ball a lot. He's going to be obviously getting carries, but like we don't need him to carry all the looks. I like Herbert. I like Roschon. So if he's slimmer, he's going to be a better pass catcher and he's going to be more dynamic in the open field. So that's something that I heard because he was up to, I think, like 215, 220 at a few of his other spots in the NFL. And I was like, dude, 205 DeAndre Swift. I kind of like that idea.
Well, one thing we talked about, Nick, to use that, because I think that's really fun and it fits what I think Swift is good at, which is being fast. So yeah, take some extra weight off. We're not trying to have you we're not trying to have you like mash the safety and then get up and keep running. If you get a seam, take the seam. But Nick, it all has me coalescing. This is something I cannot remember if we talked about it or if I talked about it on stream, but I'm just going to repeat myself anyways. Sorry. Is the Bears preseason attack in the Hall of Fame game. You can't take away everything from it as if it's the Bible, right? It's a preseason game plan. But NFL teams are so practice restricted that they do not have time to learn a fake set of plays. There's the offense in that. And one thing that has got me turning, Nick, is that when the Bears line up in any formation, any of them, you want to line up 2 tight ends on the wing with 2 guys out wide. You want to line up trips right with a nub tight end on the left. You want to line up in 11, in 12, in 13, in 10, in 1. It doesn't matter. The Bears' most dangerous option is going to be to throw the football. And it's starting to have me wonder, are the Bears going to be potentially more pass happy than we anticipate? Because if there's one thing you can point to with Caleb's background, it's that a quick screen or a quick curl or a quick hitch or a quick out or a quick blank. Well, that's what he's been doing for
Mhm.
years. Those kinds of throws, like take the ball, get it out, extension of the run game. You're not going to have to teach these to him because his release, his experience, and the backups release and experience all mesh with the identity of we're going to technically throw the ball a lot. And
Mhm.
I just wonder, looking at the future of the team, is Swift doing this in part because he's going to be getting out of the backfield? Are the Bears kidding their backfield around guys who can catch? What's Khalil Herbert doing playing third in the Hall of
Yeah,
Fame
yeah.
game? So if they're looking at this as one of the best pure runners on the team does not fit our needs, I wonder if they're going to be a more throw focused team
Mhm.
than we would think they are. Because I know you and I look at this like most people and say they got a rookie quarterback. They're going to run the ball a lot. What if they aren't? I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Well, it doesn't make sense in terms of the personnel, but also, like, and we had talked about this on the last podcast, but the best, like, fix for, let's say a questionable offensive line, which we'll get into, I'm sure, is get the ball out quick. And so you can do that in so many ways. So let's say,
Yes.
I mean, before the pass rush gets there. So let's say that you come out in 11 personnel, like you're talking about, and you have a tight end on the left, and you have three receivers on the right, and Swift, it goes empty, and Swift is out wide to the left. Now, if a corner's on him, it's zone. If it's someone else, then you're like, okay, maybe it's man. And that's where you get the mismatch problems. Remember, like Matt Forte, 6'2", good route runner that's out there. I mean, that's how you get mismatches. Like that's why you have a good second tight end. That's why the Bears made this nucleus. And I think it's to take advantage of a new age offense and not living in the past like we have been. Like, we're going to be attacking with Caleb. We're not going to be like sitting back and like, man, I hope they can just cross the 50 to give the defense a break. Like, we're going to be scoring points this year.
I think it's so funny, right? Like watching Shane Waldron's Seattle offense and watching the Hall of Fame game, I always keep coming away with the same impression, Nick, that the Shane Waldron offense is it's so thin. It does a lot of things right that all set up the offense for success. But to use an example, they had a play in the Hall of Fame game where Khalil Herbert gets flexed out of the backfield. So, Nick, what did they do? Right? They
Mhm.
threw to the tight end over the middle. They
Yep.
sent the running back out wide so that they
Mhm.
could widen the defense and get a look at what the defense's probable play call was so that they could attack the middle of the
Yep.
field.
You vacate an
This
area, then you exploit it. Yep.
this makes sense. But it's
Mhm.
so funny to me because there are a lot of plays where you're not even 100% certain that there's a third read, and a fourth read may be out of the question because the play is very streamlined. Once you get to the end, figure it out, dude. Go be a football player, as opposed to some of the Luke Getsy stuff we saw where it's like, well, we're going to need 2.5 seconds before that first read opens. And if that doesn't, then at 3 seconds, the second read's going to open. And if that doesn't, at 3.5 seconds, the fourth read is going to open. And if that doesn't, then at 4.5 seconds, you'll see this read open and then go figure something out. That is how you get sacked. Like, if you
Mhm.
want to criticize Luke Getsy for anything, of which I think there are a lot of things, some
Yeah.
of his play calls were so long developing that there was no room for creativity because it was expected that you were going to be running the play until reasonably you'd get sacked.
Yep. Kind of like the Mike Martz, right? The
Right.
9-step drop stuff.
Now, speaking of getting sacked, we can't beat around the bush. This is the most popular topic on
Oh,
any
okay, sure,
Bears
yeah.
social
Sure.
media. Any Bears social media. You have been a vocal proponent of Nate Davis, which I think has
Mhm.
been really good. Why shouldn't we be?
Mhm.
But I got to tell you, continuing to miss practice with what feels like Flus bearing down on him, pun not intended in this case, over the last couple weeks is it's starting to give me bad vibes. Now,
Mhm.
I will say before I let you speak that if Nate Davis doesn't play a down for the Bears this season, I think the Bears hedged the bet pretty well. I would love it if Nate was a B-rate offensive starter with Ryan Bates or Coleman Shelton in outright reserve. I got to make it clear. I would
Mhm.
prefer that. But this is not as desperate as we've been in the past for somebody who is maybe not giving us good vibes. Like what Jimmy Graham was for a couple seasons there, where it's like, Jimmy, you can't just be a touchdown vulture. You need to be a core part of the offense. You're going to be that, right? No, this is a little better than that. But I don't know, man. How are you feeling?
Well, there's just a lot because this is something like I guess I'm like, okay, hey, if I have to be, the sacrificial lamb, I'll talk positively about Nate Davis and all this. Because, okay, let's just start here. We're spending way too much time talking about Nate Davis. Everyone, Twitter, articles, like you would expect Nate Davis to be Caleb Williams. He's the starting quarterback. Our whole season depends on him. Like, why are we spending so much time talking about Nate Davis? Because we did, as you talk, hedge a bet. You have a better backup in there. Like, if he doesn't even play this year, the interior O line is better than it was last year. Like, we're set up for better success. But like, I put this out there. Again, we're in our Bears hive, the
Right.
honeybee hive, whatever. I was trying there.
I like
It
it.
didn't
I
work.
like it.
But like, we're in that one, and I made a whole post of like, okay, let's look at the rest of the NFL. Okay, Justin Herbert is hurt, and that might be something that lingers all season long. That would be a bigger red alarm, right? The 49ers, whether you believe Pretty Ricky or not, which I do, I think it's kind of fun, right? Right, Ayuk could be gone. CMC is out for weeks. Ricky Pearsall, who's the replacement, maybe, is multiple injuries now. Trent Williams is holding out, right? You go down the list in division because I do I do 2 articles a week for the next 4 or 5 weeks at Football Guys, and I purposely did this last year. I chose, and it's just preseason reports every week.
Right.
So I have to like look at all of the news, what's going on in these areas. Last year I had Detroit and San Francisco. They both made the championship game. Okay. This year I have Detroit and the Vikings. So I don't know if you want to make some kind of weird bet. Maybe I have the the special powers. But so I've been watching them. The Vikings have been going through it too. So we'd happened. The unfortunate incident in the offseason happened, but Mekhi Blackman tore his ACL the first practice. Griffin has a hamstring issue. Another corner. They have Robert Tunyon has back spasms. We know him, right? Obviously, Hawkinson is still coming back from his. And then they just had Jerry Tillery, D lineman, who went down. They thought it was serious, and they think that they got out of that one. So, like, that's a lot of injury stuff, too. The Rams have 4 of their 5 starters. They cut Brian Allen because of injuries. The other 3 are having injuries right now. So, like, we think, like, our O-line is so beat up. I'm like, that's beat up. Kendrick tore an ACL, their corner. Their other better corner has a hamstring issue. We played them early in the year, so that's, okay for us. Hopkins, we talked about that one last week. Their right guard, Charles, retired. Like,
Right.
I could go through this. Like, there's just so many things on every team. The Packers are dealing with it. The Lions lost an edge rusher to an ACL. They have other things. Like, every team has stuff. But, like, it just feels like Nate Davis is like, the Pope, and everyone has to talk about him at every moment. And it's in my mental health background. That's my job, by the way, y'all. My coach background, like, we have a choice, right? There's a lot of information, and we'll go into some of that, like how we want to decipher it. We have a choice. We can be positive or negative with it. It just feels like we're just like, no matter what, negative. Cut him. He's choosing not to practice, even if he's healthy. Like, I see that stuff, and I'm like, what are we doing? Like it feels like the negative stuff we get from quarterbacking in Chicago. Like every quarterback, like everyone beats on him. Like, I just don't know how this helps anything right now.
Well, I think people to defend the normal person, right? I think that a lot of Chicago fans have been trained that if you are hopeful, you must not know ball. Because to be fair, Nick, every time you get particularly hopeful about the Chicago Bears, it tends to blow up in your face. I mean, just to use an example, the Chicago Sun-Times, who have a bunch of great writers, are known for being negative, or maybe it's the Tribune. I can never quite remember. I think it's the Tribune. And they've been notably negative about the Bears for years. They've also looked really rational and objective for years, in hindsight, because everything about the Bears has just managed to blow itself up over years. So I do think that there's some of this, Nick, that you're hearing where it's like, some of it is negativity for negativity's sake. And it's just going to be that way until the curse is broken, if that makes sense. Like until the Bears make the playoffs and then prove that in the subsequent season that that playoff wasn't a fluke. If the Bears do that, people will just relax and probably talk about the team like they're the way that the Bengals fans talk about the team. But at the same time, there are some Bengals fans that are suddenly worried. People worry. So there is a degree of this where I think the answer is you just got to not listen to the people who want to cut Nate Davis. Nate Davis's contract literally makes it to where if they cut him, it would
Yeah, it's
cost the
worse.
Bears
So
$1.3 million. They're not doing
okay,
that.
like let's just settle this right now. Nate Davis isn't healthy and deciding to not practice. Like that cannot be a thing. Like I, in my mind, Robert, cannot think like he's just crossing his arms like a kid that didn't get his way and I'm taking my ball and going home and not practicing. Like, but that's what it makes it sound like. Am I
It does.
wrong?
I mean, it's what it makes it sound like. I think it's silly too, but I also think that there's I don't know. I'm not trying to ascribe any validity to it, Nick. I'm trying to tell you I don't know. And there are moments where it feels as if Eberflus, based on the guys that I talked to, because I talked to some of the beat writers now and again, and they've mentioned that whenever Nate Davis comes up, Eberflus looks visibly frustrated about it. But dude, I'm not trying to attribute too much. It's August 7th. People keep making a meal out of a lot of things, but to your point, Nick, the only things that we hear about other teams are the stuff that make the news. Kyler Gordon didn't practice today. Do you think that made the news? No. So of course, the Steelers fan that's right now locked into these Ayuk rumors, he has no idea that the Bears starting nickel corner hasn't practiced in what you'd
Right.
swear is like 4 days, right?
Mhm.
No, nobody cares. So to some extent, I think you're right that we've picked a villain and we're running with it. But on
Yeah.
another side, I also think it highlights just how emotionally connected a lot of Bears fans are to the O-line issue, which also brings up something we should probably talk about, Nick, and that's that not only is most of the league dealing with 2 minimum offensive line injuries,
Ooh.
offensive linemen do not grow on trees. Like the replacement level offensive lineman is much worse than Ryan Bates, who is much worse than Tevin Jenkins, who is not one of the top guards in the league. I don't say that hatefully. He just doesn't play enough games yet. And so, like, I'm more trying to paint the picture, Nick, of the fall off between what people think a really good offensive line looks like in the absolutist sense, and then when you actually get to the relative part of football, how good is a normal offensive line? And it would shock you what some of these guys are playing with. It's
Well,
why the Bears are pretty
mhm.
obviously betting on scheme. They're pretty
Mhm.
obviously betting on getting the ball out quicker and having receivers that can get open. And I don't even know if that's a bad bet because we don't know who's week 1 hurt and who's training camp hurt. You
Right.
know what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Yeah. And I think like that's what's cool about and like, I want to get into the quotes with Flus here in a second, but I think that's a good point, Robert. Like I watched the quarterbacking or quarterback Netflix series, and then you have the wide receiver series, then you have Hard Knocks, and all of those I think give a lot more light to what people think that those guys out there, that guy's 75%. Kirk Cousins having broken ribs and playing and not be able to get the play call out in the huddle tells you what those guys are going through. Like, and again, as a coach, I know this. Like, I'm like, okay, you can't go out this next series. Like, you're done. Like, or guys that have the flu and they're trying to play through it. Like, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on, and I think it adds so many layers to this. Where literally, I had the Shane Waldron today. I listened to his press conference, and he said, yeah, there's a lot of guys going through things, but he says the goal is being healthy for week 1. Like he even says that. Like, and as a coach, that was always my goal. It wasn't like I want to have the best practices during the week and we're dead or a guy can't get through it. And that's I think some of it why the starters didn't play last week, why they have so many reps in preseason and things like that too is the goal isn't preseason. The goal isn't practice. The goal is to be the best we can for week 1. So let's get into some of the quotes because I think that's what people are really on. So one thing is that so with Nate Davis, he did come back on Saturday somewhat, came back Monday somewhat. So to me, like it's not a week 1 injury. It's not like, ACL, broken leg, whatever. He's working back from whatever it could be. Um, I did look at his injury history because I think that's kind of relevant to this. I didn't look in college at all. Rookie year, just a brief synopsis, everybody. Inactive his first, he was a third round pick, inactive his first 3 games, played his fourth game, started the last 12. Second year, started all 16. Third year, he got on the COVID list twice, which he didn't miss games for that. But I mean, as people who went through that, sorry, we all went through COVID. Like it affects everyone differently. And, some are better or worse. He missed 3 games with a concussion that year, missed some camp days that year. And then he missed 12 or played 12 games his last year in Tennessee and fractured his ankle. Which that has me wondering a little bit too, like as we try to figure out what the injury is, we can talk about that a bit, but like fractured his ankle once, high ankle sprain last year with us, is our ankles going to be an issue here? I'm not really sure because we don't know what's going on with him. But Shane Waldron in the press conference today literally said Nate is dealing with a little bit of injuries. And like, that's why they're kind of shuffling things around. So, I mean, I just want to put that out there. It's not like he's choosing just not to practice. Like there's clearly something to go through. Now, if you want to talk about, pain threshold, I would think football players have a pretty high one. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to practice through injuries. I don't really know, but I'm just saying there clearly is an injury if he's saying that.
Some guys are going to, some guys aren't. And at the end of the day, you got to plan around both options, which is why it doesn't bother me that today's starting line was left to right. Braxton, thank you, Braxton, for being just normal. Everybody else has had like some kind of report, and feels like Braxton Jones has just shown up, done him, and he's cruising towards an extension right now. I don't even know how I fully feel about that. Conversation for another time, but right now, dude's earning it. So Braxton, Tev, Coleman Shelton, Ryan Bates, and Darnell Wright. And you know what? If that ends up being your week 1 starting line, okay. But if it's Nate Davis, also okay. I do think that we're going to do that thing where we decide that we hate a lineman, and so because of that, if Nate Davis allows 1 sack, he's gonna get called an awful game, and he was so bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever. You got to leave that to some people. But I'm with you, Nick, where it's like I do think we're making a meal out of things. Another thing that I feel like people are making a meal out of that I would like to address. You wanted to address Nate Davis. I want to address how I've seen a lot of people, very clear-minded football analysts, that feel like they're wringing their hands a lot about how, quote, the offense hasn't won a day yet, end quote. And it just feels to me like it would be very weird if a defense that is loaded for bear, pun intended this time, and has been together for an entire season was losing days to a rookie with a bunch of new offense additions, a brand new offense, and sure, some talent, don't get me wrong, but like, Nick, this defense in this setting shouldn't be losing to the Bears offense. And I think, if anything, this sounds like it's a very good thing about Jalen, who, dude, I was worried Jalen Johnson was going to take a step back from last year. But Keenan said in his presser yesterday that he has yet to catch a pass against Jalen Johnson. The dude has been strapping the Bears receivers, and these are good receivers. Like, these are not Darnell Mooney and Equinemius St. Brown out here. So there's part of me that looks at all this, and I've heard a lot of people frustrated with the performance of the camp, or the performance of the offense. But dude, historically, the ones have gone against the twos. So when the offense has been bad, they've been bad against the twos. Now they're bad against the ones. I appreciate the competition. I cannot help but think that this is helping Caleb learn through getting his failure out against a quality defense. But what do you think?
Well, that's kind of the thing here is like, I mean, both sides can't be good every play, I mean, and as a football coach, when I watch a good play on one side, I see a bad play on the other side. That guy took a bad angle. That was an MA. This guy messed up, whatever it might be. Like, there's always going to be one of those. And it's like, either the D line is amazing or the O line is terrible. Or the O line is good, but struggled one day, there's always going to be two sides of this where it's like, the O line can't be great and the D line can't be great. Both can't happen on every play. So I think that's part of this, is that you have to realize this is a process. What's interesting too is I heard that quote by Keenan, And then I watched Hard Knocks, and I swear he caught a pass on Jalen Johnson. I was like, Keenan, hey man, I saw it. It's on national TV.
Right. I mean, I actually heard somebody comment the same thing. And so who knows? Maybe he caught something. Maybe it was against somebody else. One other thing that I've heard that we might as well talk about, I've heard some people talk about offensive operation and whether or not this offense looks clunky or ugly, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of reports out about that today. We're recording this on Wednesday evening. Y'all, if you think that this offense is going to come out looking pristine and clean and down to down perfect, that is a wild expectation of all the things to expect from an offense in its first year being led by a rookie. Cleanly down to down operation would be a heck of a thing. I mean, if they'd added Derek Carr, I would expect that. If they'd added Kirk Cousins, I might expect that. This offense, until Caleb, I think, Nick, fully gets his feet under him, is going to be inconsistent. The question is whether or not they'll be explosive while being inconsistent, because the two aren't mutually exclusive. This reminds me a lot of the mid-season and late-season Miami Dolphins, if you like this comparison, Nick, where it's like the offense is not always working well within itself, but then you throw this pass to Tyreek Hill and that play to Jalen Waddle and that play to Devin Achane, and you score 24 points anyways off the backs of explosive plays, which correlates better than anything else in modern data with the points that an offense will score. And the Bears certainly have the weaponry to be explosive. It's just a matter of when will they become consistent. And I don't know. That could be a year. That could be 10 weeks. That could be a miraculous 2 weeks. We don't know. We'll find out when we get there. But
when I think
all the hand-wringing about points just feels to me like we're looking too much at style points at a rookie quarterback that has not seen every look in the book. We're going to get there, fam.
that reminds me of the people that keep all the stats at practice, Oh, he was 10 of 12 today. It's way better. It's like,
Fields got like a 75% completion percentage in Steeler camp.
Were they going down the field? What package was in? Because the point is to install, like as a coach, like that's my. So this actually gets me to a point with this is I like when people are watching Hard Knocks, they see the practice because they're seeing all of this, right? They're installing things. We've talked about this on this podcast. The point of practice every week when you're in the season isn't practicing my tackling form and hitting and whatever. It's mental. I got to remember so many things. Like when they're on this hash, they like to do this out of this formation in this personnel package. Like that's a thing, y'all. Like pattern matching for DBs. Like there's always going to be some tendencies that you're looking through. And looking at Caleb, right? Because the first episode, a lot of Caleb, a lot of Flus with his new look, and Brendan Shagru got a shout out, which was sweet, by the way.
Yeah,
I was like,
did.
oh, I know
yeah,
him. I know him, is how many people were talking to Caleb, right? Shane Waldron, Kerry Joseph, Flus. And I know that because quarterbacks have been my biggest position as a coach in terms of an assistant, mainly quarterbacks for 14 years, actually. And then as an OC, I was always with my quarterbacks because it's such a thinking position because you have all of the stuff, right? You can even see him. He's hold on. What was that? Give me the play call again. Everything is going through. He's always constantly thinking because it's okay. Hey, and I'm sure you saw the one. Hey, you know why you messed that one up? It was man. Oh man, I thought it was this. Oh, okay. Rome was down the sideline, right? Like there's always these things because you're going through your progression. Is everybody lined up? What's the front? Do I have to flip the call? Right. And in the middle of that, Flus is telling me one thing, right? Waldron's got another thing. Joseph, there's so much information overload at times.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the part that people don't realize. And I hope when you watch the episodes, you see some of that stuff. There's so much stuff going through your mind. And this actually leads me to another small thing. So I listened to Cairo Santos's press conference today, and they talked through a lot of things like Hall of Fame. He visited some of the Hall of Fame guys, like Jan Stenrud and some Vinatieri jerseys and, et cetera. But he added into two other small things I thought was interesting. One was he's worked on his tackling form, and in every kickoff, he envisions where he should be positioned, how things are different now. And the other one is Torrey Taylor's another rookie, right? Another one, more information, have to learn a bunch of stuff. And he'll do kicks, and Torrey is the holder, and Torrey will be like, "Oh man, sorry, I messed that one up," and he's like, "No, it's fine." So Torrey's going through trying to be perfect and trying to how he's going to interact, how he's going to work the operation, the snap. Like there's a lot of stuff, y'all, that is mental, and that's what a lot of this sport is.
Oh, it's all mental, dude. The other thing that I feel like people forget about this sport, look, you're talking about it. You brought up Tory Taylor. A bad hold can cost you a game. Like it depends on the moment, right? But if you hold it wrong and then Cairo rips the ball on accident 8 yards out of bounds and not touchback, out of bounds, ball comes out to the 35 and a couple explosive plays later, you give up a field goal, that can lose you a game. But also, for all the hand wringing about offense, the Bears could, not saying they will, Nick, but they could roll out against a Tennessee team that now needs to figure out right guard, doesn't have Nuke Hopkins playing, and that thing could end up a 13-14 slobber knocker of a game where Tory Taylor plays lights out, pins them twice inside the 5, and turns into a game where even if the offense sputters, the Bears come out on top because, dude, that's just the NFL.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the time of year when people sweat and they start to pull their hair out and they say, how are we going to score 28 points against the Titans? Right? And the answer is, first of all, I don't know. You just got to do what you can do to avoid getting smoked by, 38-21, the way the Bears did against the Packers last year. Start there. But
come on, Robert. Don't bring that up.
Hey, I bring it up because there's a readiness element that is worth talking about.
No, I get it.
But also, the Bears' defense sounds like they're popping. And if this defense can keep that momentum, I don't see why the offense has to come along immediately, because this is a defensive head coach with a team with a bunch of defensive dogs that has suddenly the cap space to make another move for another defensive dog. And I don't see why, Nick, we keep spinning this story into, well, the offense has to be at blank or else. It's like, well, that's just not how I see it.
Well, and the goal is, again, you're installing stuff, right? Plays. Like, you start with your base, whatever it is. Let's say 20, 10 runs, 10 passes. You know what I mean? And then there's always gonna be a screen, play action, quick game, deep game. Like there's all these things you're implementing in, and there's an order to it, right? I know the air raid, there's normally a 3-day install schedule, and you constantly repeat that. And everyone has a different way about that. And the goal isn't to have it all installed right now.
No.
The goal isn't to have it all installed by week 1. That's the thing, is you have to figure out what you can push by later, what you're going to need for this team, what's going to exploit there. Like, it's just so mental that the offense is always going to be behind, y'all. It is. I mean, early on for sure.
The other thing that I would personally envision, you tell me if this is true, but the offense is going through basic installs. The defense is iterating. Because the defense is iterating, that means the defense is practicing some of their most bizarre and exotic looks while the offense runs the base plate of what they're doing. Then they get to the Hall of Fame game, and suddenly, Nick, you're not running a 2-minute drill anymore. What does that mean? That means you can do play action. And did you see some of those Houston linebackers bite? That makes life a lot easier for quarterbacks. None of the easy stuff, like none of the natural things that make a quarterback's life easier, are happening right now for Caleb Williams in camp, which, again, that doesn't mean anything if you don't want it to. It's just continuing to paint the picture of try not to sweat the small stuff too hard in Bears camp right now, because there's going to be a lot of small stuff for you to sweat. Just, we can take a chill pill just because it'll be easier that way. None of this stuff matters until we get to later on down the road. Talking about the preseason game coming up, we don't need a full preview. I don't think we need a full preview. Do you?
No, I don't think so at all.
There's one storyline that's now popped up in Hard Knocks. It's popped up on Bears Twitter, and I would like to make one statement. This might be too bold, Nick. I might end up wrong. I really don't like putting myself out like this. I will be blown away. Blown away. If a guy who represents Ryan Poles' ability to scout quarterbacks in Tyson Bagent gets ousted by a guy that 4 teams have cut. That's not a fair way to think about it in terms of what Brett Rippon did in the Hall of Fame game. But realistically, this is how a lot of NFL clubs think. You know what I'm saying? Where
Dude,
Tyson,
Bagent, go ahead. Sorry.
Bagent got into the game in the Hall of Fame game and got asked to do as little as a quarterback can possibly be asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to remember, Bears fans, that's not a sign of they hate him. That's a sign of they like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you get asked to not do anything, that means they're not worried about whether you can do anything. And the converse isn't necessarily true, especially once you dig deeper into the season. But it just has me thinking that there's a lot of people that are watching Brett Rippon. JT O'Sullivan did a breakdown of Brett Rippon against the Houston Texans. So there's going to be some hype around Rippon. And there's always a chance that he makes it as a third quarterback, despite the fact that the Bears only kept 2 last season. Wouldn't surprise me if the Bears intend to try to cut Rippon and put him on the practice squad, which I think they'd still be able to do because he's been in the NFL for 6 seasons, but you'd have to check me on that. The QB controversy that a lot of people have fanned into flame, I just don't think it's legit yet.
No, I'm with you. We talked about that a little bit last episode. I mean, I liked Brett Rippon out of college. I liked Tyson Bagent. It's just night and day. You're facing 3s and 4s on defense versus 1s and 2s. I mean, it's just not the same thing. What they asked. I do want to talk about both guys though. And this is off of Hard Knocks. Okay, first off, Tyson Bagent is hilarious.
Yeah,
man, like funny, like one
quintessential backup quarterback, right?
Well, so when the Theo was doing his song, did you see Bagent just bellowing it out too?
Yep.
I was like he's into it in the front row, and then the birthdays. Yeah, I share Kanye's birthday. How about you? And then Brett Rippon is OJ, right? And then he's like Tom Hanks, and Bagent's like, you should say in that order. Like I'm like, that's so funny every time. The one cool thing I saw in Hard Knocks from a football perspective, and this is with Brett Rippon. And if you guys go back and watch it, he says it multiple times. He says, and I wrote it down, great eyes, great feet. Great eyes, great feet. And that's back to, I don't know if I've ever talked about this on air, but I used to race, and so positive self-talk, that's an athletic thing. I know I work in the mental health field, but also like seeing that you can do it, believing that you can do it. I've been watching the Olympics a lot. I don't know if you have, Robert, or not.
Yeah.
But well, first off, I like watching fast people run fast. I think it's like the coolest thing. And it could be anything. The 1,500 meter final, I think was the best final I've ever seen for 1,500 meters.
It was so sweet. It was so cool.
I followed those guys a lot. So I'm like, oh, okay, Jakob, Kerr, who's going to win? And then Hocker. I was just pumped, right? But a lot of times I'm watching them warm up. Gymnastics, I saw this a lot, is they're saying things to themselves. And that's this positive stuff. So you're seeing this right here, those sports psychologists, right? And it's working with Brett Rippon. So I think that's a cool part where people get more insight into not just, hey, snap ball, throw ball. Like there's a lot going through in terms of like calming yourself before a free throw, same type of deal. I thought that was kind of cool. And then the other thing I want to mention from Hard Knocks. So speaking of the Olympics, Jonathan Owens, right? And his wife there's so many things that I saw and I'm like, oh, he's just like us, right? So he's FaceTiming, right? Simone, right? And she's getting on him because he's got dog hair on his pants. It's like, oh yeah, I got to do this, or she's like, now listen, you're going to be late. You got to do all these things to get to the airport. I'm like, man, he's got a wife too. You know what I mean? Like, and then I don't know if you saw, I've done this multiple times where he like hits the garage and then like jumps over so the sensor doesn't go off, and he's like, if I can't do that, I can't play football anymore. I was like, dude, I do the same thing. Like we're like the same guy going through all these other things. You're just a professional athlete,
The same, very different, but the same.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought it was fun. The whole episode was a great time. I thought it was hilarious because my wife, she promised that she'd watch it with me, and she'd had an exhausting day. So she fell asleep to the sound of Liev Schreiber about 12 minutes in and woke up. And when she woke up, she was like, what did I miss? When I went to sleep, it was basically the guy going, Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams, Caleb Williams. And I was like, that was pretty much what it was for the next 40 minutes. So you're good.
Okay. You know what my wife was doing? So she was there too for the show. It was her birthday. Okay, so this is yesterday, right? Today we're recording on Wednesday, and I had to be supportive husband. I made
Oh yeah.
dinner.
Oh yeah.
I had things ready, guys. Okay, but during dinner, I'm like, now listen, tonight I gotta watch this. So she's like, oh, it's okay. So my wife's really into plants. Okay, I don't know if
Plants.
yeah, like making plant or
Right.
like growing plants and like then she like repots them and then one's growing, so you gotta separate them, whatever. She's big into plants. Okay.
Very plants.
So one of her birthday gifts was like herbs and spices, and like so now we're going to like basil and like all these like other things. So she's like on the floor and she got this new thing from someone bought her like a kit. It's like a growing kit. She's like putting it all together and she's so excited, right? That in the middle of this episode, because I'm pumped, right? You get that intro, Robert,
Yeah.
with Neil Sayers and Butkus and the Michael Jordan intro. And I was pumped. And I looked down. She might have been more pumped about these plants than I was about the show. I was like, man, look at us at our height right now.
That's awesome. That's it right there. Man, I'm so pumped about this season. Like, we could talk about all kinds of the different things that are going to happen in the Buffalo game, which is part of why I thought we could just breeze past it. I hope we get to see some of the starters. I would love to see Rome get his first NFL catch
Yeah.
in this setting. I would love to see more from Valus, who was curiously absent. It almost feels like they have decided that Valus may not be a receiver, but that he is a running back because they want to keep him on the team. I don't know. No idea. Right. But there's a lot to potentially see from the Buffalo game. The question becomes, how healthy are the starters going to be? Because I don't need Caleb Williams getting his initial action behind Bill Murray and the backup right tackle and the backup left guard
Right.
either. So
Yep.
there's a boundary to this where I'd be shocked if Caleb doesn't play a series or two. I have no idea what he'll be looking to do. But Bears fans, if you can remember this far back, nobody needs a Cam Meredith situation ever happening again. So
Yep.
limiting the action of the starters is never going to be that bad. There's always a balance with this.
Well,
Always.
one thing though is even if they did have him play and he just handed the ball off, whatever, is there is value in that pregame warm up stuff. So they were talking about that like last week. Like they wanted him just to go through the process of like getting ready for a game and doing the warm ups because everything's going to be different. And I'm telling you, all the places that I've been, college, high school, whatever, everyone has a different like process, the timing, who goes on the field and when, what you do, right? Being on the sidelines, how does the operation work? Some people are all signals. I know with NFL, you got the headsets and they say the calls. Where's the OC? Is he in the press box? Is he on the sideline? Like in terms of that operation stuff, I think there's value with that. So he saw
Yes,
it from the sideline point of
I
view.
agree.
So I think it'd be nice to have him just go through it, whether even if it's handoffs or whatever. I think there's value in that one for sure.
Speaking not
Um,
as a fan, but as
yeah,
somebody who wants Caleb to develop well, I think it would be ridiculous to put Caleb in and not have him throw. You got to throw something. I don't care personally whether it's a spear screen or whether it's a slip screen, whether it's an RPO, it doesn't matter. I think you got to get his first NFL pass attempt out of the way. And again, Nick, this isn't results, right? It's
no,
more going back to 2018, which was one of the more curiously well executed preseasons, I think, of Bears history. Oh, no, wait, this is 2019. So never mind. That didn't go well, did it? Or 2018. Both seasons started badly. Wow. Anyways, first or
I just like that for a moment there. We were all in Robert's head,
I
and
know.
we didn't, and it's just turning in there, and
Wow.
it going back and forth,
Wow.
man.
Anyways, I remember Trubisky's first series. He came in, he handed the ball off 3 times, he left, he was done for the game. And,
Yeah,
there's something to that. There really is, I think, where you walk in, you call the play, you take a look at the defense, you hand it off. You do that 2 more times. You didn't pick up a first down. Okay, you only had one series anyways, you're done. In
what?
Caleb's case, you should want to see some live bullets. Like,
Yeah,
this isn't me trying to push the envelope too far. It's more like you want to either give Caleb the confidence that he's doing well, or let him know that you can't do blank or you get strip sacked. Like both and go create a disaster or do it normally. Whatever Just get it out of the way because against the Titans it counts. And against the
Sure.
Bills, the Bengals, and is it the Chiefs in the
Yeah.
third
And
preseason
we got
game?
a heavy schedule. Yeah.
It doesn't. In those three, it doesn't. So go out there
Mhm.
and try something. Do it like you've done it in practice, but this time you can do it in front of some fans. They're going to freak out if you do something well. In my opinion, this is very valuable theater that is very different for him in particular and Rome than any of the games. So use it. Try
Yeah.
it. But that's just me.
Yeah.
There's a balance
It's
to
an
all this.
opportunity. I'll give it. It's an
Caleb's
opportunity.
55 snaps in the preseason sounds like a great target.
Yeah. It's I think it's going to be interesting just how much people, because you looked at the hard. I was going to say people care. You watch the Hard Knocks from one, right? And I like the part with Saban
Yeah, that
talking
was
with
awesome.
Blues. I love Saban, and again, like him, Bill Belichick, not super animated guys. They're a process, like it's like, was it the 76ers, right? You gotta trust the process,
Yep.
like that's what we have to do here. We have to trust that everybody has a system in place to get players healthy, to get rookies developed, to get veterans tuned up. Like we have to trust all of these pieces are in place and they're professionals, that they're getting the process together for that week one. And it's I think it's cool to see the other side. I also thought it was cool to watch Caleb mess up that song. I think that's actually says I think it says a lot about him. That he didn't try for something really silly. He didn't try for something that, to be super serious. Like he's just one of the guys, man. And they weren't like afraid to yell at him. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, the diva, like all the things that we heard, man. I haven't seen any of that stuff.
Man, I agree with you. I agree with you. And it's so funny because every time I think about Caleb's character, I keep coming back to the same place that it's just not going to matter. I think Aaron Rodgers is not the kind of guy that I would actually want in my life. Do you follow? But especially during his heyday, oh my gosh, I would have done so many things for him to be my team's quarterback. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
on one hand, dude, was Caleb screwing up the song a sign that he didn't take the time to learn it? Or was he so busy in the playbook that he didn't take the time to learn the rookie hazing song? Dude, I don't care. And I bet you don't either. We're
Well,
just going to put the most positive shine on it possible. And then if he wins games, nobody cares.
well,
I
you're
think there's a chance. I'm going to keep saying this because I think it's really possible that the Bears could easily be a plus 500 team through the first 10 weeks. The schedule is just laid out really wonderfully for them. And if that's the case, man, the narrative of Caleb Williams just doesn't lose is going to right itself, especially as he gets a little bit more time under him and a little bit more success under him. Also, I'm pretty analytics nerdy. You and I both are. But one thing that I've seen a lot of analytics nerds talk about over the years, dude, is this idea that winning doesn't perpetuate winning. And I think that is patently untrue. I think that there's a balance. I've called for the Bears to tank multiple times over the last couple of years because there are points where you're going to turn the roster over so much that it doesn't matter if you teach DeAndre Houston Carson how to win because he's not going to be there when
yeah,
you
yeah.
actually try to start winning. But dude, Nick, if this team in this season can win more games than it loses, let alone make the playoffs, let alone get a win in the playoffs, I think you set the culture in the locker room that nothing less than that is acceptable,
Mhm.
right? The only way to go from there is up. I can guarantee you right now the Houston Texans are looking at the Chicago Bears like, sure, a worthy opponent, but one they should beat. Just like Bears fans are looking at the Texans saying, the Bears should lose to the Texans. But dude, Nick, am I crazy? The Texans aren't that good. Like they're pretty good. They
Yeah,
added
no.
some good players.
Mhm.
Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, dangerous. Stephon Diggs plus what they had at receiver, dangerous. Are the Bears ill-equipped to win one football game? They don't play 10. It's not a 7-game series. Like I could keep going. I think you get the gist of where I'm going.
I think they're better than 1 out of 10 in that whole series. If you're getting to it, I want to digress back to one thing you said though.
Do
So
it.
this I had 2 other points on this pod before. I don't know, or who knows when we'll end it.
Yeah,
But
we'll close up.
one is it was interesting for me to hear Shane Waldron, to hear, I think it was Cairo Santos, to hear, I think it was everyone that I heard out of the presser day, TJ Edwards, Javon Dexter. All those guys didn't watch Hard Knocks live, right? Waldron said today, yeah, I got it, he DVR'd it or whatever, which I thought that like went away, but I guess it's still a thing. There's, some of them like, hey, my wife caught some of the highlights, so they told me some of this stuff. They all want to watch it, but y'all, when you said maybe Caleb didn't practice the song enough, so didn't know it all, they have so much stuff they're working on. Whether it's like getting their body ready for the next day, they have to go in the cold tub, they have to get stem, they got to do whatever else. They have to, I don't know, be present with their family because it's the only time they can. They have to look over the install. Like Flus was going over. It's like, hey, you're going to go overseas, right? You're going to be in Paris. We'll give you the installs so you can work on them while you're there. Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, just go have fun, whatever. Like, you still have jobs and stuff you have to do while you're there. Like, there's so much stuff to this sport, especially at this level, that I think it's nice that you get that Hard Knocks is going to highlight so everyone can see that. But there were so many players that didn't watch Hard Knocks. Like 8:00 last night. Sorry, 7:50. I was ready.
Right.
Okay, where is it going to refresh? There it is. Right. Like, we were all ready and geared up for
Tuned up.
They have other things that they have to do that's more valuable than watching themselves and their teammates and coaches on Hard Knocks. So I think that's something that's really cool. The other thing I have is super non-football, but I thought it was kind of funny. I think one out of the two is going to hit for you. So if you have anything else football-wise, go with that. I have something else after.
No, I'm done, man. I'm ready to wrap when you are.
Okay. Two things, Robert. Okay. You've seen Top Gun, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Have you seen Days of Thunder?
No.
See, I thought that with you because you're younger than me, or yeah, you're much younger than me. Days of Thunder, same type of movie, right? Like Top Gun, right?
It sounds like the same movie.
Like airplanes and fighting and something dramatic happens and Tom Cruise rises, right? Days of Thunder, NASCAR, right? Same thing. Something happens, Tom Cruise rises in the end. I was watching it the other night because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. Okay,
that's awesome.
I prefer that one actually to Top Gun. So
okay,
if you get
a moment, man,
check it out. But this hat, man, it's from there because I was like, dude, that's a sweet hat. So I went and bought it. Right. The other one again, because I wear some fun stuff for the episodes. The other one is I think is going to hit with you. Okay.
Okay.
Is I'm rocking a Macho Man.
Oh, I loved that. I saw this earlier. I was like, that's awesome. That's
Macho Man. Yeah. So I thought one of the two was going to hit with you, but just something kind of fun to wear for the episode.
Oh, yeah, dude. So stoked about where this Bears season is going. It's fun because we get to ask the top level questions, and then preseason's out here, and preseason's for the boys. So like preseason is Jatiri Carter playing tackle. Did you catch that? Like, Carter got reps at tackle, and eventually, hopefully, we get Karan Amagdaji getting some level of reps. Flus thought he would be back for the season or for the training camp, and he has not been. So, not amazing there, but nothing you can do about it. All this to say, Nick, I think we're all kind of waiting with bated breath for the first week of the season, and the preseason is going to happen in between then. So, you know what? We got it. Yeah. Are you going to be free for a post-game show?
Saturday, right?
Yes.
I will not.
Can we do a post-game on Sunday?
We could do Sunday, yeah.
You heard it here first, Bears fans. We'll hit you with a post-game on Sunday. Nick, you got anything you want to say before we jump on out of here?
I just enjoy it, man. Football is back. Man. Like let's keep, again, it's just who I am. Positive vibes. Positive about the players. We get to see Hard Knocks. Me and Robert are here talking football with you every week now. Yes, again. Like this is going to be a fun season. Let's make it fun.
Let's make it fun, Bears fans. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. Tell your friends if you enjoyed it. Tell us if you enjoyed it. Rate us if you haven't on your favorite podcast platform. And until then, bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with us.